Hello, welcome to this finger knitting tutorial. I thought I'd show you to begin with what sorts of things you can do. So with finger knitting you kind of create this, looks a little bit like a tube almost, but it can open up. So you create something that's quite narrow and it sort of curls in on itself like that. So it starts off as a sort of narrow strip, and then the more you do it, it curls in, so it turns into this sort of sausage situation. This is made of t-shirt yarn. This is a necklace. So you can see you get this lovely knitted effect on your stitching, and it's very effective. So you can do very long pieces of this and then turn it into a scarf, so wrap it round multiple times and it makes quite a cool little scarf. You can make bangles, so if you made this a bit smaller you could make quite a nice bangle to wear. You can use lots of different things to do your finger knitting with. So I've chosen t-shirt yarn for this necklace, but you can just use a ball of wool that you've got at home. Ideally I wouldn't go too skinny with your yarn, because it might be a little bit gappy, so you'll get lots of big gaps and holes between these stitches if you choose a very skinny yarn. So I would say probably a chunky yarn or bigger. You could try with double knitting, but again it probably work better if you've got little hands. So if you're a small person, if you're under 10 years of age, then probably you could go double knitting and you'd manage some quite small stitches. But my hands are much bigger, so I want to use a chunkier yarn, otherwise my stitch is going to be so big that I'm going to get sort of big gaps in between these lovely sort of V-shaped diamond stitches. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to actually use some t-shirt yarn today to show you, because it is so chunky that you're going to be able to see really clearly on the video how to do it. Now I'm going to unravel quite a lot so that I don't have to keep yanking the yarn from this ball as I'm going along. Okay, right, that will be enough to get started, so I'll keep that out of the way. Now then, if you were making something like a necklace that has a tie on it, you're going to need to make sure that we allow enough yarn to make the actual tying section. Okay, so I'm going to do something like this today. So I'm going to allow just a nice long piece of yarn there that isn't going to be knitted, and that's going to be the tail at the beginning. And I'm not going to do anything with that, but I've measured it off so that it's available for later. Now then, if you're left or right-handed, it doesn't matter. I'm going to show you what I would do as a right-handed person, but you would just swap this to the opposite side. Okay, so you're going to have your tail over the front of your palm, and then you're going to take your yarn and you're basically going to weave it in and out of your fingers. So I'm going behind my index finger, over the front of my middle finger, behind my ring finger, and over my little finger. Okay, so we've got my little finger there. And now I'm going to go back the other way. So I'm going round my little finger, over the front of my ring finger, behind my middle finger, and over my index finger. Okay, so that counts as, it's almost like one row. Can you see we've just got one line of one yarn thickness height line across there. Now we're going to do the same again. So we're going to go back behind, so it's already traveling around my index finger. I'm going to follow it round in between my index and middle finger, around the front of my middle finger, back of ring finger, front of little finger, and then we're going to reverse back again. So we're going to wrap around that little finger, over the ring finger, behind the middle, and over the index finger like that. So now if I push these down, you can see we've got a row, we've got 2 rows of yarn. 1, 2. And what you're aiming for is for every row that you're going to knit, you want 2 rows. So we're going to be doing that wrapping motion before we knit each row, okay, to make sure that we're ready to start. Now then, to actually get started, we're going to knit our first row, okay? So to knit your first row, you're going to your index finger and you're going to the first loop that you made on your index finger, and you're just going to pick it up and pull it over the top of your index finger, leaving the second loop on there, okay? You might actually find that if you wiggle everything up your fingers sort of up to your middle knuckle there, it's going to be a little bit easier. So you're going to pick up the lower loop and you're going to just pop it over the top of your finger, and working along all the fingers, pick up the lower loop and drop it off the back. Pick up the lower loop and drop it off the back. Okay, so now we're left with just 1 row of loops. Now at this point, this tail that you've got, you can actually take it round the back, and if you hold on to it and pull on it, if you watch what happens, it pulls everything in nice and tight. So that first row that we've done is locked in there now, and that tail can hang off the back of your hand because your knitting is going to grow off the back of your hand here. Now we're going to do all the work on the front. The actual knitting work is going to happen facing your palm, but the actual piece of knitting that you're creating is going to grow from the back of your hand like that. So the tail's going to be sat hanging at the back. Okay, so we're ready to create to get ready for the second row. So we've got our yarn at the back here, and we're going to just go around the front of our index finger and just do that weaving again. Back we go. And then when we're back at the beginning, we can just pull that, keep that working yarn down through the front of our palm there. Then we can grab hold of it with our thumb and it doesn't run away. So we can go on and do our second row. So we're going to take the lower loop over our index finger, just drop it off, middle loop, ring finger loop, and little finger loop. There we go. And every time you've done a row, you just take your little tail at the back there, give it a little pull, and it just brings everything in. And then we continue. So we've got our yarn here ready. I'm just going to move these a bit further down my fingers because they do have a tendency to slide up. Okay, so I've got my working yarn around the front of my index finger, weaving all the way along and back again. You'll find a comfy spot on your fingers where you're comfortable having these loops. I like them halfway up my hand like that because then there's not so far to travel to lift this loop over the top of my fingers. Oops, there we go. We've done another row, and I'm going to pull at the back there, and we're ready to carry on. So you don't want to wrap too tightly because you do need a little bit of wiggle room to be able to pick this up and pull it over the top of your fingers. You can bend your finger down to pop it through if that helps. I always find it very difficult to bend my ring finger. It's a funny one, it doesn't want to go where I want it to go. There we go. Just pull on that a little bit and reset. Off we go. Just being careful it doesn't pop off my little finger there. So always starting with your index finger when you're starting your new row. T-shirt yarn's quite good because it's got a bit of stretch. So it's, oh, that was just dropped off my little finger. Let's pop him back on. There we go. And you can start to see now what that's looking like. If I turn it over, you'll be able to see more of the kind of diamond shaped stitches starting to form on the back there. It's still a flat sort of rectangular, long rectangular piece that we're making, but the more you make, the longer it gets, the more it will curl in and become more kind of sausage like. So let's do a little bit more. Oops, that little finger doesn't want to stay on. You can use your thumb to hold the lower loop down as well. Make sure it doesn't run away. Okay. Oops, sorry, wobbly camera. Okay. If you get distracted and you look at your hand and you say, oh no, am I ready to start again? Have I got anything to do? You know that you've completed a row when you've only got one row of loops. So it's time to start a new row. If you've got 2 loops, then you're yet to knit that finger. Okay, so let's go round again. So these fingers all have 2 loops on them, so I know that they all need to be knitted. But let's say I've done that first one and then my phone rings and I can't remember where I was at. Happens all the time. So now that's when you have a look and you say, well, that one's only got 1 loop on, so that finger's been knitted. These have all got 2 loops on, and we're working from left to right, so the next one to knit is this one with the 2 loops. Okay, so that's where we're going next. And you see it's actually, with t-shirt yarn, obviously it's quite chunky, so it's going to grow quite quickly. It was only 2 rows ago that I showed you what it was starting to look like. So it's growing really fast. Okay. So this video is going to be available for a week after today. So if you fancy re-watching it, you can. If you fancy going to get yourself some t-shirt yarn, if you really would like to make a necklace. They're really quite nice, these necklaces. They're statement necklaces for summer. There we go. So that's the back of the work. Can you see if it still does open up into sort of a flat piece, but then if I pull on it, it kind of curls in. And now we're starting to get that really nice shape starting to form. So I think probably for a small little necklace I might just do maybe another 4 rows, something like that. But you can choose how long you make it. You might like the necklace to go all the way around your neck, in which case you'll do it a little bit further, but you can keep sort of stopping and having a measure. If you were doing a scarf with some normal wool, say a chunky or a super chunky, you could probably use the whole ball, like 100-gram ball, a bit like this one. You could use that whole ball to make a scarf, and you'd be wrapping the scarf around your neck kind of multiple times. But that's what makes it cozy. Not that we're thinking of coziness at the moment, but you will be come September. Oops. And you'll find the more you do it, you'll get a bit quicker as you go as well. So before you know it, you'll be doing it without really paying attention. You'll probably be watching TV and doing it at the same time. There we go. If you've never seen t-shirt yarn before, it is actually made of recycled fabric. So in the fashion industry, when they have fabric remnants left over in the factories, they gather them all up and then they cut them into sort of ribbons. If I show you this one, I can unroll it a little bit and you'll see it's actually a little ribbon of fabric. And when it's pulled tight, it curls up again, a bit like the knitting that we're doing. It curls up into a slimmer kind of piece of yarn. I've actually used up all of that yarn that I unravelled at the beginning, so I'm going to just unravel a little bit more. There we are. Right, let's see how we're doing here. Lovely, that's coming on nicely. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this one now, and I'll show you how to end your knitting. So I'm going to choose another long section of yarn here so I can tie the two sides of my necklace together. So I'm just going to chop it here like that and get rid of the ball of yarn now. So I've got my piece of knitting and then I've got my two ties on either side there. Now then, to end the knitting, what you're going to do is you're going to take off each of these loops, but hang on to them. So keep a finger through them so that they don't run away. Okay, and then you're just literally going to so I've got them all lined up like that, all the loops that were on my fingers. It's a little bit fiddly, but you're just going to take the end that you've just cut and you're going to poke it through and out the other side. Can you see? So if I pull those out, you'll see that I've got the 1, 2, 3, 4 loops that were on my fingers, and I've pulled this yarn underneath and through all of those loops, and then I'm pulling it tight, and the tighter you pull, it'll kind of knot on the end for you. So there we have, I'll turn it around this way, a really cute little summer necklace, little statement necklace you can tie around the back of your neck and trim these bits if they're a bit too long. And there we have it. So what I'll do is I'll post into the group some other ideas of what you can actually do with your piece of knitting at the end, because there are actually some fun little sort of toys and cuddly animals and things like that you can actually fashion out of this stuff, you know, tying pieces together and stuff. So I will show you that at the end. But hopefully you've enjoyed yourself, and if you have, I'd be really grateful if you feel like you'd like to consider a donation. There's a PayPal link at the bottom of the event description, and 10% of all donations will go to the Liphook Wellbeing Group to help with their work in the community through events like this and various outreach initiatives. So every penny is really gratefully received for that cause. Thanks very much, and hopefully see you again soon.